Podium mic, check, check, 1, 2. Podium mic, check, check. All right, let me get some fuzzies off. I was thinking about it.
Hi, I'm on IFB1, TVU1. Are you getting me okay? So, yeah, probably channel 2 is just on the NAT mic, so I'm going to leave it on, though, just for what else. And then I think Troy is also on channel 1 as well, left mic. Yep. And that's Logan. That's Logan. What IFB should he dial in on? Yeah, I don't know anything about 4 unless that's where they're putting the court. Yeah, I'll holler at Logan and see what IFB should. Yeah, what IFB should Logan be on? Do you know? Okay.
time no see, man.
No.
Check, check. Can you hear me? Jacob? Thank you.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, I apologize. It'll take me a moment here to get logged on and then we'll get started. Okay, we're on the record on case CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. The court's been advised that the jury has reached a verdict. The court will note the parties are present, the state's present with Mr. Wood, Ms. Blake, Mr. Wixom, and Ms. Beatty. Mr. Pryor's here representing the defendant, Mr. Daybell. And the court at this time is going to instruct the jurors to please be brought into the courtroom. That will include our alternate jurors as well to be seated. And then I will have the marshal get the verdict form from the jury once they return to the courtroom. So if they can come in at this time, we'll have them brought in.
All right, please. Here's all present accounted for, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, the court's going to next just make a reference that there is a courtroom conduct order in effect in this proceeding to remain in effect. So I appreciate everyone complying with that order, as most of you have done throughout the proceedings in this case. At this time, then, the first matter I'd like to take up is to do a roll call of the jury for the record. So Madam Clerk, if you could please conduct a roll call of our jury to make sure they're all present and properly seated at this time.
Juror number 1, red card number 27. Juror number 2, red card number 219. Juror number 4, red card number 631. Juror number 5, red card number 653. Juror number 7, red card number 752. Juror number 8, red card 1680. Juror number 9, red card number 823. Juror number 10, red card 1358.
Present.
Juror number 11, red card 1365. Juror number 12, red card 716. Juror number 14, red card 997. And juror number 15, red card 1078.
All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for conducting the roll call. All right, at this time, I'm next going to inquire from the jury foreperson. Has the jury reached a verdict? All right, thank you. Mr. Bailiff, if you would please retrieve the verdict from the jury foreperson. Thank you. All right, the court has reviewed the verdict form. I'll note that all counts have been properly marked, as well as the verdict form's been properly dated and signed by the foreperson. The next step then is Mr. Daybell, if you and counsel would please rise, I'm going to have the clerk read the verdict.
In the District Court of the 7th Judicial District of the State of Idaho and for the County of Fremont. State of Idaho plaintiff versus Chad Daybell defendant, case number CR 22211623. Verdict. We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled action for our verdict, unanimously answer the questions submitted to us as follows. Question number 1. In regards to count 1 of the amended indictment, is Chad Daybell not guilty or guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan and grand theft by deception? Guilty. Question number 2. In regards to count 2 of the amended indictment, is Chad Daybell not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Tylee Ryan? Guilty. Question number 3. In regards to count 3 of the amended indictment, is Chad Daybell not guilty or guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow and grand theft by deception? Guilty. Question number 4. In regards to count 4 of the amended indictment, is Chad Daybell not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Joshua Jackson Vallow? Guilty. Question number 5. In regards to count 5 of the amended indictment, is Chad Daybell not guilty or guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell? Guilty. Question number 6. In regards to count 6 of the amended indictment, is Chad Daybell not guilty or guilty of first-degree murder of Tammy Daybell? Guilty. Question number 7. In regards to count 7 of the amended indictment, is Chad Daybell not guilty or guilty of insurance fraud? Guilty. Question number 8. In regards to count 8 of the amended indictment, in regards to count 9 of the amended indictment, is Chad Daybell not guilty or guilty of insurance fraud? Guilty. Dated this 30th day of May, 2024, and signed by the presiding juror.
All right, Madam Clerk, thank you for reading the verdict. At this time, I'm just going to collectively ask the jurors, all of you, is this in fact your unanimous verdict on each of those counts? Very well. At this time, I'm going to inquire if the parties wish to have the jury polled. Does the state wish to have the jury polled?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Does the defense, Mr. Pryor, wish to have the jury polled?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Very well, then. I'm going to direct the clerk to record the verdict. At this time, then, this does conclude the guilt phase of this trial. Because the defendant has been convicted on counts of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, the state has filed a notice of intent to seek the death penalty, and so a second phase of this trial, called the sentencing phase, will be taking place next. We're going to take a recess at this time for approximately an hour. We will come back on the record and begin with the start of that sentencing phase of the trial. I would like to remind everyone that this courtroom conduct order is still in application throughout these proceedings. Thank you all for complying with that. We are going to take that recess at this time. Mr. Daybell is to remain in custody at this time for the commencement of the sentencing phase. And with that, thank you all, and we will be in recess.
All right, please.
Mic check, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, mic check.
All right, everybody, I'm going to hand this off to you, Jordan. I believe we are live right now. Just ran down from the 4th floor where a verdict came down this afternoon about 10 minutes ago. 210, Chad Daybell found guilty. Chad Daybell found guilty on all charges. Conspiracy to commit murder of Tammy Daybell, conspiracy to commit the murder of Tylee Ryan, conspiracy to commit the murder of J.J. Vallow, the murders of J.J. Vallow, Tylee Ryan, and Tammy Daybell, and 2 counts of insurance fraud, guilt across the board. This jury deliberated for about 6 hours. They started yesterday afternoon, and the verdict came down, well, before 2 o'clock. We got word around 1:15-ish that a verdict had been reached. We were given the notice that we needed to be ready for that verdict, and it was read at 2 o'clock. The courtroom was packed. I can tell you lots of tears, lots of sniffles as this verdict was read. We walked out in the hallway afterward, and law enforcement officers were crying. They were hugging Larry and Kay Woodcock. Samantha, or Tammy Daybell's father, hugged Larry Woodcock as the two of them cried together. A lot of emotion in that courtroom. This, of course, has been nearly a 5-year ordeal, and these families have waited for this day. Chad Daybell showed little emotion. And what happens from here is in less than an hour, we'll be back in the courtroom and the penalty phase of this trial will continue. What does that mean? It means that Tammy Daybell's siblings and her dad have prepared statements that will be read from the stand. They will get to read victim impact statements that basically share how they feel and how this has affected them. Chad Daybell's children could also read those statements, but they were not in the courtroom today. They were not here. No word if they are coming. And then because this is the penalty phase, the jury will then go back and deliberate if Chad Daybell should get the death penalty or life in prison. It's unclear how long that process will happen. I mean, who knows? It could be later today if all the victims go. It could go into tomorrow. It could go through the weekend. But the big news today, if you're just tuning in, Chad Daybell found guilty of murdering J.J. Vallow, Tylee Ryan, his wife Tammy Daybell in her bed. He's found guilty of conspiracy to commit the murders of J.J., of Tylee, of Tammy, and he's found guilty of 2 counts of insurance fraud. Now, I don't expect that we'll see people coming down here just yet. After Lori Vallow's verdict last year, Larry and Kay Woodcock came down to address the press. I believe that they're going to stay up there until the penalty phase of the verdict happens. And I don't know how long that will last. I have to give you a little behind-the-scenes look at how this verdict, at least how we found out about it. Earlier this morning, the jury had a question, and the court reconvened. The jury was called in, the judge was called in, everybody gathered in the courtroom, and there was part of an instruction that was not included. And the jury had a question about what that particular part of the instruction needed to be. So the judge added a 40-second instruction to the packet. They then went back and deliberated. Around 1 o'clock, we were sitting in the courtroom. There was a bailiff in there. There was some court staff. Another bailiff opened the back door, not back where near the judge's chambers are, and he said to the other guy, "Hey, come here now." And immediately we knew something's going on. This bailiff then left the courtroom. About 5 or 10 minutes later, Kay Woodcock was in the courtroom with us. She yelled, "We have a verdict." And several people in the courtroom cheered, and the bailiff said, "You can't do that, no cheering." And then I started to get multiple texts from people saying the verdict's in, the verdict's in. The courtroom started to fill up with law enforcement officers from Fremont County, the FBI, the Rexburg Police Department, the Attorney General's office, agencies from all across the state. They're represented in that courtroom. They have worked hard for this day, and they have got the verdict that they were hoping for, that the state has been working for. And, of course, Chad Daybell's defense attorney argued that he had nothing to do with this, but the jury thought otherwise. So, again, we're about to start that penalty phase. We will carry that for you live. The judge said that's going to start around 3:15 Mountain Time. It's 2:25 now, so we have about 50 minutes for that to happen. I can give you a look, Jordan. Why don't we pan if we need to? There are people gathered here outside the courthouse. Just kind of pan around. You can see cameras from news stations locally and national news networks. And then behind Jordan, I don't know if you can swing all the way around to a 360. There are people who are out here just at the courthouse. Just they wanted to come by, they wanted to see what was happening, and they are gathered here on the courthouse steps to see what this verdict is. This trial has been over 8 weeks long. If you include jury selection, it was 9 weeks. Jury selection started April 1st, and then witnesses started the following week with opening statements and witnesses and evidence. And then just yesterday, closing arguments. The prosecution took about 2 hours. The defense took about an hour and a half. And then the prosecution went back for a rebuttal closing that was nearly an hour too. And the jury began deliberating around 4 o'clock yesterday. They wrapped things up around 6. They are in sequestration. They cannot go home. So they went to their hotel, which is somewhere in the county, where they spent the night. They were back early this morning, 8 o'clock. And, hey, Janice, can I interview you? Okay. There's somebody that's been here every day from Rexburg that I thought I might get her thoughts. Julie. You want to grab her, Jordan, see if she'll talk? Lady in the denim shirt. A lady from Texas who knew Lori Vallow was also here, and Jordan's just gonna run and grab her, see if she'll do a quick interview with me. We can get her thoughts about this whole thing. I don't know if she wants to do it, but she was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Can I just ask you a quick question? Sure. You'll be great. I interviewed you last year.
Yes, you did.
Remind everybody of your name.
Shelley Vester.
And Shelley, you're from Texas.
Yes, Austin.
And you were in the courtroom just now.
Yes, I was.
And describe the feeling.
Amazing. Tense, but relief.
Yeah.
It's a journey that's ending.
And did you predict that verdict?
Yes.
You did?
Of course. Yes.
Not surprised at all?
Not surprised, no.
What did you think looking at Chad Daybell as that verdict was read?
I was wondering if he was breathing. He was no expression at all.
Kind of like what we've seen the whole trial in a way, but was this different?
No, I think well, he did look a little pale. Did you think he looked a little pale?
I was sitting actually behind him, so
Okay.
I couldn't quite see his face, and there was a deputy in the way, but there was no movement as far as I could see.
Like you didn't even know if he was breathing, no blink, of course, which he never does, right? So, yeah.
You've been here several days, and you were here earlier in the trial.
I have, yes.
What's your overall takeaway? I mean, why the draw? Why come out from Texas to spend time here?
Well, I was associated with Lori many years ago.
She did Lori's hair. Can I announce that?
Lori did my hair.
Lori did her hair. I think we said that last year.
Yeah, for 10 years. So
10 years.
So I played with Tylee when she was young, and I'm just here to support Tylee and Joe, and of course the other victims as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you happened to be here on verdict day.
No, and nobody was sitting in front of us.
Yeah,
So that was nice.
Were you here for Lori's verdict?
No, not
Okay.
for the verdict.
That
No.
courthouse was packed that day. There were more media, it seemed, that day, although it's kind of picked up out here.
It has.
And
Yep.
and this is the result you wanted. Are you going back in
Yes.
for the penalty phase?
Oh yes, I'll be here till Saturday.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I know you
You're
did a
welcome.
great interview.
Thank you
You
very
did good.
much. Thank
She's
you.
been here early every day with the
Yes.
group.
And thanks for the donuts.
Yes, brought donuts this morning. I guess that my theory on bringing donuts
You're
helped.
right. Yes, you're a repeat
Right.
because you brought them for Lori's trial
I
for
brought
the
'em-
verdict day, right?
Verdict day,
Verdict
brought
day.
donuts. We got the verdict
Yes.
in, and then did it again this year.
So that means you need to go to Arizona and bring donuts
I
as
will
well.
do it.
Okay.
I will do it. Let's not talk
Okay.
about Arizona yet, though. Although she does bring up a good point. We do have another trial for Lori Vallow, who is in Arizona at the Maricopa County Jail on these charges in relation to the deaths of Charles Vallow, her fourth husband, and the conspiracy of the death of Brandon Boudreaux. So she faces conspiracy charges on both of those people, Charles and Brandon. That trial is scheduled to begin in August, but I don't think it will be happening in August. I think it will be happening early next year. Many of you are just tuning in. Chad Daybell found guilty this afternoon on all counts, 3 first-degree murder counts, including J.J. Vallow, Tylee Ryan, and Tammy Daybell. 3 conspiracy to commit first-degree murder counts, Tylee Ryan, J.J. Vallow, Tammy Daybell. 2 counts of insurance fraud for the insurance money that he used after Tammy Daybell died. He used those funds. And Chad Daybell killed his wife. He killed J.J. Vallow. He killed Tylee Ryan. and he conspired with Lori Vallow to commit their murders. That is what a jury decided on this afternoon when they handed down this verdict less than 20 minutes ago. And now we wait to see what his punishment will be. Will he face the death penalty? Will he face life in prison? Idaho has not sentenced somebody to death since 2017. This would be the first death penalty case in eastern Idaho in I don't know how many years. Several years, possibly over a decade or more. But that jury could very well come back after this penalty phase and say Chad Daybell deserves to die for the crimes he committed against his wife and the children of his new wife. Inside the courtroom, we have Tammy Daybell's father. For the first time, he came to a court hearing. I spoke with him briefly after. He was very emotional. He said, I hugged Larry Woodcock and we cried. Larry Woodcock and Kay Woodcock were in there, tears running down their cheeks. I was sitting on a row in front of several law enforcement officers with their spouses. I could hear sniffles. I could hear, I didn't, not sobbing, but you could tell that people were crying. It was an emotional moment in there. And as we led up to the verdict, I mean, it actually happened so quick. I think we were in there less than 10 minutes. We've been in there 9 weeks. But when it came down to the verdict, the jurors were brought in. The jury floor person said, we have a verdict. It was given to the judge. The judge opened it. The judge gave it to the clerk. The judge had the clerk read the verdict. Guilty, 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 guilty. Chad Daybell stood. The judge asked the prosecution if he wanted to do a roll call to poll each juror. The prosecution said no. The defense also said no, which is different than Lori Vallow's trial, where her defense attorneys said, yes, we want you to poll the jurors, and they did. And then the judge said, okay, now that this is a first-degree murder case, and the prosecution filed an intent for the death penalty, we will go straight into the penalty phase, which begins at 3:15 this afternoon, and we will carry that for you live as it happens. And then, if Chad Daybell is sentenced to death by the jurors, they will decide if he's sentenced to death. We don't know when that execution would happen. That could happen. It will likely be several years because there are so many appeals that happen in death penalty cases, but it will likely be some time before Chad Daybell is put to death if they decide that route. If he is sentenced to serve life in prison, he will serve it at an Idaho Department of Correction facility, and he has not been assigned one, but I would imagine it would be somewhere in the Boise area. Got a cough here. So that's what we're looking at today. You can see we have a media podium set up here, assuming that some of the family members will come down and address reporters, probably not till after the penalty phase starts. You got to think that they've been preparing these statements. They've been waiting for this day for 4 years, over 4 years, to look Chad Daybell in the eye and try to get some sort of a closure or answers or something like that. And it's here. And the verdict was just read, and now they will sit down at the stand, at the podium, at the witness stand, and they will read their victim impact statements. So that's what we have going on here. Let's show people one more time if you want to pan around here, Jordan. We can see the media people that are here, lots of cameras from Idaho and national media as well. And then we also have several spectators who have gathered on the courthouse steps just to see what's going on and to get a look at the coverage or get a look at this historic day here at the Ada County Courthouse. I do want to say, if you missed the verdict, you can go back and watch it. All of the trial we have archived on our YouTube channel. 67 witnesses called by the prosecution. Several of them were called multiple times. They testified 2 or 3 times. The defense then called 11 witnesses, and then there were rebuttal witnesses that the prosecution called 6 of those witnesses. So all in all, we heard from over 80 people on the witness stand during this trial. Some of those witnesses talked for only 2 or 3 minutes. Some spoke for an entire day. I believe Lieutenant Ray Hermosillo was on the stand an entire day. And it appears that this jury weighed all the evidence. They weighed all the exhibits. They weighed all the witness testimony and came up with this verdict. Chad Daybell guilty on all counts. Love to know your thoughts in the comments below, what you think about this verdict. Were you surprised? It took 6 hours, a little under 6 hours. My count was about 5 hours, 54 minutes. Lori Vallow's jury took about 7 hours. And Very similar pattern to hers, whereas hers broke her trial. The jury started deliberating late in the afternoon, went home, came back the next day, had a verdict around lunchtime. As for this trial, they broke late in the afternoon yesterday, came back in the morning, and began deliberating too. In case you missed it earlier today, just about an hour before this verdict came down, I spoke with juror number 4 in Lori Vallow's trial. I interviewed her just here outside the courthouse, and she told me that she kind of gave us some insight as to what happens inside that jury room while they're deliberating. For her, she was equally as nervous this year, she said, waiting for that verdict to come down, not knowing when it would be, what it would be. And now that the jury has this off their minds, they can focus on the next stage, which is the penalty phase. So I think I'm going to run upstairs. I'm going to run back upstairs, get back inside the courtroom right now. As I mentioned, we will have that penalty phase here when it starts at 3:15. We're just going to stay live. You can stay live here. We'll probably keep the camera here in position in case anybody comes back out. And then once that penalty phase starts, you can just stay with us. Just keep watching. Got to take a little personal note here and thank you all so much for sticking with us throughout this trial, watching every day, for following us on our feeds, for commenting, for sending in your questions. There will be no Courtroom Insider tonight. Of course, it's a big day, but I'll actually be flying to CrimeCon, where I'm going to be interviewing Lori Vallow's sister, Summer Shiflett, on Saturday, and we'll talk about that next week on Courtroom Insider. But we'll definitely be back tomorrow night for Courtroom Insider, and through the weekend, too. We'll try to do some special editions from CrimeCon. To recap it all for you, I'm getting a buzz here. I hope they're not buzzing me to get upstairs. We have a verdict on the Chad Daybell murder case. It's taken a little over 8 weeks, and the verdict has been reached, and it is guilty on all counts. You can go back. You can watch that verdict if you want. You can watch the closing arguments that led to today, the other witness testimony. There's a lot to digest after this entire trial, and of course, we've got it all covered for you. So, Jordan, Jordan, do you want to come out for a minute? I'm going to bring Jordan out here. He can I'm going to talk with him about what the scene has been like. I told you what was happening inside the courtroom. Why don't we get Jordan here to tell you what things were like out here? How did you know that there was a verdict?
I have I've had my earbud in the whole time, just listening in, just with that anticipation everybody else had, but as each thing was read off, you'd hear people like cheering, and
out here there was cheers.
Yeah, and it was just kind of funny because it's almost like a sporting event or something like that, where just people were so excited, and it was really cool. And as I heard Judge Boyce read off all the charges, I started getting a little emotional too, which kind of surprised me because I've been involved with this case for a little bit, and I've always seen it as like an outside thing, but I was kind of shocked that I got a little choked up. But yeah, it's exciting, and I'm happy that we have a verdict.
I'm going to call over this woman. Jordan, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I talk to you real quick? This is Megan. She was inside the courtroom. What was your thought being inside the courtroom as this verdict came down?
It's about time. 5 years. Justice has been served for Tylee, JJ, and Tammy. And next we're going to get justice for Charles.
What was the feeling in there?
Heavy. A mix of emotions. Happy, sad, nervous. Just really heavy. Really heavy.
Were you surprised at the verdict?
No. I was a little nervous about the JJ charge, but no, I knew justice would be served, and the jury of his peers has spoken, and he was found guilty, just like his wife.
Did you have a chance to look at Chad when the guilty verdict was read?
I did.
And what was his reaction?
No reaction. He didn't even make a facial expression whatsoever. No sad, no happy. He didn't move his shoulders. I'm shocked that he didn't react.
You have been one of the original people from the beginning following this, haven't you?
I have, yes.
What got you interested in the case?
When I saw missing kids and I was local, it just went straight to my heart, and I knew I needed to be a voice. And I've stuck through it since day one, and we got a lot more to go.
And you don't live in Rexburg?
I don't live in Rexburg. No, I lived in Meridian.
You lived in Meridian, and you traveled in for today?
I did. I traveled from Nevada for this verdict today.
From Nevada, and you have the bracelets on. Hold those up. She's got Justice for JJ, Tylee, Tammy. Charles, I'm sure, is on there too.
Yep.
You've seen their photos over and over and over. I mean, they've become part of your life. I'm sure it's kind of an emotional day for you.
It's very emotional. I've gotten really close with the family, and they mean a lot to me. So feeling them and seeing their reaction is what we're here for. They've been through a lot, and they deserve this.
Are you going back up in a few minutes?
I sure will.
Witnesses?
Yep.
All right.
I'm here.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Nate.
Good to see you. Just one of the many people who were in the courtroom today, and you can see there was just such a wide range of emotions. I can only imagine what's happening in the court, the hallway upstairs, as finally this verdict has been reached after such an extensive process. All right, Jordan, I think I'm going to head up. We're going to stay with us. I'm just going to hand off the mic to Jordan. If there's any breaking news, Jordan, I did want to ask you one thing, though. I'm going to bring Jordan back in here. How did you find out there was a verdict, and when you learned there was a verdict, what was the change in environment out here?
Yeah, so we had all just kind of gradually started getting set up just in case, but again, we really have no idea. And then you messaged me, and then I let the other camera guys know. It's like, there's a verdict, we're like, let's get this going. And so we all got set up, but it was kind of a scram there for a minute because we really had no idea what to expect or when it was going to happen. And so, like, once it came in and we could watch that feed, things got quiet and we just kind of waited.
And Jordan was out here messaging me. John Pryor just walked in, letting us know when people were walking in. And you had seen him earlier today, but that was for the hearing that they had about the juror question. It ended up not being the verdict. So
yeah, I was kind of had my eye out for like Pryor or anybody, and then I started seeing all the Rexburg police come in, and that's when I was like, oh, something's going to happen. So,
well, thank you for your hard work.
No problem.
And thank you, by the way, to everybody that liked the photo of Jordan. Jordan, this is how good of a guy he is. At lunch today, I was in the courtroom. I couldn't leave. He rode his new skateboard to Jimmy John's and brought me a sandwich and chips and a drink. And so I need to buy him Jimmy John's because he's out here in the sun. I mean, I'm in a courtroom where it's air conditioned. He's out here in the sun. Luckily, it's a beautiful day here in Boise. But our team behind the scenes, back at the newsroom, Peggy has been working so hard. Nate Sunderland, he's the guy that makes sure that this is streaming okay. Robert Patton, he's our web guy. He keeps us on so that you can read the updates. We have a whole slew of reporters. Caitlin Hart, she's in the courtroom right now. She's going to be taking over for me in a couple of hours when I take off. The team at East Idaho News has really done a lot over the past 2 months so that I could be here bringing you the news every day as they cover everything else. So I just had to publicly thank them, and I've just got to tell you, I work with really good people. Okay, I got to get upstairs because I don't want to be locked out of the courtroom. I'm going to hand the mic to Jordan. He's going to stay live here on the podium, and if there's anybody that comes out to talk, we'll carry it live, of course. And then once that hearing begins in about 20 minutes, we'll swap over and you can watch it. No idea how long we'll be here tonight. We could be here till 6, 7, 8. Could be back tomorrow. We'll just see how the remaining afternoon goes. All right. Thanks for watching. I'm Nate Eaton. Stay with us. Here you go, Jordan.
Thanks, Jordan. Yep.
All right, once the jurors are ready to be brought in, they can enter the courtroom, please.
Yes, Your Honor. All right, please. Here's our President counter for you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, good afternoon, everyone. We are back on the record on case CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. The court notes that earlier this afternoon, the jury returned a verdict of guilty on several counts that are subject to this capital sentencing phase, including in the verdict form counts 1, count 2, count 3, count 4, count 5, and count 6 of the amended indictment. The court at this time then is going to commence with the capital sentencing phase. I'll note that in this case, the jurors have returned, including the juror alternates that are here as well, and the 12 jurors who returned the verdict under Idaho Code 192515 subsection 5B. The court is using the same jury to conduct this phase of sentencing also, and that statute reads that if the defendant's guilt was determined by a jury verdict, the same jury shall hear the special sentencing proceeding. So we are in that special sentencing proceeding. As I mentioned, the jurors are here and present. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for continuing your jury service. You've again been seated for your continued service in this case, and that's the matter we're taking up at this time. To give you an idea of just the schedule, the court has some preliminary instructions that are going to be read to you this afternoon. We're going to commence then with further evidence on the sentencing phase starting tomorrow morning after I read these preliminary instructions. And the court's proposal on our typical scheduled plan would be to start at 8:30. Is the state going to be ready to proceed at 8:30 with any impact statements that may be offered?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, that's how we'll run the scheduling at this point then, and I'll inquire as to the jurors going forward. Also, the scheduling we'll have during this phase of the proceedings. They don't need to be limited to the timeframes we've had throughout the trial, including, depending on how long this takes, weekends. So I am essentially leaving up to the jurors their proposed schedule within reason of when we'll work through this proceeding. So the court is going to read some preliminary instructions then to the jurors. And again, you'll receive additional jurors when you retire to deliberate on this part of the case. But for now, the court will just read these and those will be included with you later. So in this case, the defendant in this case has been convicted now of the crimes of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. We will now have a sentencing phase of the trial regarding those offenses. Additional evidence may be presented during the sentencing phase. You should also consider the evidence presented during the trial. Before the death penalty can be considered, the state must prove at least one statutory aggravating circumstance beyond a reasonable doubt. If you unanimously decide that the state has so proven one or more statutory aggravating circumstances, then you must decide whether the imposition of the death penalty would be unjust by weighing all mitigating circumstances against each proven statutory aggravating circumstance. At a separate proceeding, the court will sentence the defendant for other offenses of which you have found the defendant guilty. Instruction number 2. Your duties are to determine the facts, to apply the law set forth in my instruction to those facts, and in this way to decide the case. In so doing, you must follow my instructions regardless of your own opinion of what the law is or should be, or what either side may state the law to be. You must consider them as a whole, not picking out one and disregarding others. The order in which the instructions are given has no significance as to their relative importance. The law requires that your decision be made solely upon the evidence before you. Faithful performance by you of these duties is vital to the administration of justice. In determining the facts, you may consider only the evidence admitted during this trial and during the sentencing phase. The production of evidence in court is governed by rules of law. At times during the sentencing phase, an objection may be made to questions asked a witness or to a witness's answer or to an exhibit. This simply means I'm being asked to decide a particular rule of law. Arguments on the admissibility of evidence are designed to aid the court and not to be considered by you nor affect your deliberations. If I sustain an objection to a question or to an exhibit, the witness may not answer the question or the exhibit may not be considered. Do not attempt to guess what the answer might have been or what the exhibit might have shown. Similarly, if I tell you not to consider a particular statement or exhibit, you should put it out of your mind and not refer to it or rely on it in your later deliberations. During the sentencing phase, I may have to talk with the parties about the rules of law, which should apply in the case. Sometimes that will occur at the bench. Other times you may be excused from the courtroom so that we can discuss those matters. You are not to speculate about any such discussions. They are necessary from time to time and help the sentencing phase run more smoothly. Some of you have probably heard the terms circumstantial evidence, direct evidence, and hearsay evidence. Do not be concerned with those terms. You are to consider all the evidence admitted during the trial and during the sentencing phase. However, the law does not require you to believe all the evidence. As the sole judges of the facts, you must determine what evidence you believe and what weight you attach to it. If any evidence is admitted for a limited purpose, you are not to consider it for any other purpose. There is no magical formula by which one may evaluate testimony. You bring with you to this courtroom all the experience and background of your lives. In your everyday affairs, you determine for yourselves whom you believe, what you believe, and how much weight you attach to what you are told. The same considerations that you use in your everyday dealings in making these decisions are the considerations which you should apply in your deliberations. In deciding what you believe, do not make your decision simply because more witnesses may have testified one way than the other. Your role is to think about the testimony of each witness you hear and decide how much you believe of what the witness had to say. A witness who has special knowledge in a particular matter may give an opinion on that matter. In determining the weight to give such opinion, you should consider the qualifications and credibility of the witnesses and the reasons given for the opinion. You are not bound by such opinion. Give it the weight, if any, to which you deem it entitled. Instruction number 3. It is presumed that no statutory aggravating circumstance exists in this case. This presumption remains throughout the sentencing phase and during your deliberations. The state has the burden of proving the existence of a statutory aggravating circumstance, and that burden remains on the state throughout the sentencing phase. The defendant is not required to prove the absence of any aggravating circumstance, nor is the defendant required to produce any evidence at all. The state must prove the existence of a statutory aggravating circumstance beyond a reasonable doubt. A reasonable doubt is not a mere possible or imaginary doubt. It is a doubt based on reason and common sense. It may arise from a careful and impartial consideration of all the evidence or from lack of evidence. If after considering all the evidence you have a reasonable doubt about the defendant's guilt, you must find the defendant not guilty. That in this time then concludes the initial preliminary instructions for the sentencing phase. And the court is going to be in recess then until 8:30 in the morning, when we'll commence with evidence on that phase of the trial. Before we break for the day, does the state have anything further?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Anything further from the defense?
Nothing, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll note then the jurors will remain sequestered during these proceedings, and we'll begin again tomorrow at 8:30. Thank you again for your continued service, and that will conclude our matter for today. Thank you.
All right.